everyone. We're here. Thank you. Wow, it's a long day. I removed some slides. I'm going to move fast through this, but I want to give you a little tour of what I have been up to over the last 20 years or so. So, buckle in, just be 5-minute talk. So before I tell you about a lot of things that I think you'll find fun and exciting, I just want to get really hard on my perspective about the times that we're living in now. This is my motivation that gets me up and keeps me working on this. And that's that I believe strongly that we are in the midst of a crisis. And I'm not talking about the external crisis that we inflicted upon our planet. I'm talking about an internal crisis, a crisis of our minds, or what I call a cognition crisis. So a cognition crisis, by my definition, is one where both our understanding and our ability to enhance cognition is just tragically lacking. Now, I'm defining cognition very broadly here. Our attention, perception, memory, reasoning, decision-making, our imagination, our creativity, our emotional regulation, our empathy, compassion, and our wisdom. Now, there have been times in human history where societies have prioritized enhancing human cognition. Now is not one of those times, right? And we are paying a great price for that. So on the clinical side, we know over 500 million people around the planet are suffering debilitating effects of impaired cognition, right? And this is getting worse, and we know it's getting worse for children from depression, anxiety, even suicide, and in our seniors with dementia. But the reason I don't call this a mental health crisis, the arguably more well-known version of this, is because this is a crisis that I would say touches all of us, right? So our limitations in long-term thinking, analytical decision-making, and empathic concern are plain to see just by reading the news every day. I mean, if you read the news today, I'm sure you found that to be true. So I would say that enhancing human cognition needs to be a global priority, placed on par with the other pressing priorities that we face. The reason why is because if we cannot manage to sustain our attention, focus it in the long term, make creative, wise, and future-oriented decisions that prioritize others over ourselves, we will never be able to manage long, complex, time-delayed crises like climate change. No matter how much information we acquire, it's not a limitation of technology or knowledge. It is really a limitation of our minds. So we have to embrace this challenge and level up our minds. Now, how do we do that? I'm going to propose and share with you a vision that this can be accomplished by harnessing a core aspect of human growth and development, which is experience. So for thousands of years, we humans have been creating and ritualizing experiences to improve the quality of our lives. Music, dance, art, stories, sports, games. We've also intentionally designed experience to improve our mental health, right? A core aspect of the widespread ancient practice of meditation is not just enlightenment, it's releasing us from unhealthy mental states, stress, fear, grief, craving, and clinging. You could read about this in, 1,000-year-old manuscripts that this was the oldest experiential medicine. Now, despite this rich history, and despite the firm scientific foundation in the field of neuroplasticity, most people just don't think about experience as medicine. Certainly not in the same way that they think about pills. So that is what I've been working on. For 17 years, I've exploring how technology can change that by delivering personalized, targeted, and adaptive experiences, what I call the closed-loop experience, one in which your environment is constantly being updated and personalized based upon your state in the moment. So let's take a moment to break this down. There's everything in my talk, everything that I do is related to this phenomenon, so I really want to just talk through it. So, well, this really stretched out there. Okay, so most brains are not quite this long. So you're having an interaction with a digitally delivered closed-loop experience. And while that is happening, information about your state in the moment, the stress, your emotions, your performance, is being captured with sensors. Either you're wearing them or there's a camera pointing at you. And then some processor is using some type of algorithm to feed you back an environment the sensations, the challenges and rewards that are personalized for you in that very moment, so that it's not so hard, your interaction, that you give up out of frustration, or so easy that you give up out of boredom. So this is the closed loop experience. I want to make two important points here. It is the nature of the experience, the mechanics of the interaction that activate brain networks selectively, something that we have never accomplished before with any other intervention. No drug, no brain stimulation has activated widespread networks in this way. This is how the brain works. It responds selectively to experiences. This allows us to create the targeting and the personalization. The other aspect is the adaptive nature of the closed loop, constantly putting pressure on those underlying networks, harnessing the brain's inherent plasticity to optimize its function over time. So this is just using the natural machinery of the brain to improve itself. So my journey with closed loop experiences started in 2008 with this game that I designed, developed with friends of mine that worked at LucasArts at the time. This game was called NeuroRacer, and was designed based on my research to challenge the brain of older adults in this study at a very high level. Two tasks that are competing for your attention, distraction, constantly having to switch, and then also go deeply. And what we found after 5 years of research, we published this in Nature in 2013, special moment for a research lab. It's like sort of like the cover of Rolling Stones for us to get a cover of Nature. And what we showed here was that this game, when played for a month by older adults, 1 hour a day, 3 days a week for 4 weeks, 12 hours of exposure, they get better at the game, but they also get better at their working memory, their short-term memory for faces, and their sustained attention outside of the game. There's some preservation of these abilities 6 months later, and we recorded neural activity before and after to understand the neural mechanisms of action that lead to these effects. So this wasn't a perfect paper, it was the first of a series, but it really, I think, created the blueprint that you could work as a scientific lab I'm at UCSF, like right across the city over there, with professionals in other industries, like the video game industry, to create something that neither group could do alone, and then do a carefully controlled study with recordings to understand, can you create a transfer of benefits outside of the game? That's what we essentially accomplished here. So now fast forwarding to 2020, deep in COVID, a company that I co-founded called Akili took this game through and presented it to the FDA after 30 research trials, becoming the first and still only FDA-approved video game. So thank you, it was quite a journey. I remember how many stages thank you. How many stages I stood on over 10 years and said, this is going to happen someday. And then I was being like, is this really going to happen? I mean, it was a long time. 2 years in front of the FDA after we hit all our primary outcome measures. We're talking, this is a prospectively designed, double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial in kids with ADHD, not done by me, but done by the person, Scott Collins, who led a lot of the drug trials on ADHD. So this thing was buckled up, pre-submitted, primary outcomes called in advance, really showing that this game improves attention in children with ADHD beyond a control group playing another video game that didn't have any benefits at all on their sustained attention. Since then, we've shown that this game in children, when coupled with stimulants, none of these kids were on stimulants in the first trial, show an improvement beyond. So there's actually a synergistic effect. There's completely different mechanisms of action between a stimulant and a video game like this in terms of its benefits, so they're actually not competitive. And then in further trials, we showed 3 times the improvement of attention measures in adolescents, 7 times the improvement in adults, leading to approval, 2 more FDA approvals, 1 for adolescents. So the adolescent and the childhood approvals are prescription only. So right now there are over 10,000 prescriptions in the US and every state for a video game as a treatment for ADHD. And the adult, we actually sort of went in a different route, got FDA approval, but as the first digital over-the-counter treatment. So no doctor prescription required, which is a benefit. And so people can self-diagnose with ADHD, like you might self-diagnose with a headache. Instead of going to Walgreens for Advil, you can go onto an app store and have your own treatment for your adult ADHD. So the last thing I want to say is that just 2 months ago, a Japanese drug company named Shionogi, who licensed this technology from Akili, went made a Japanese version of the game, still keeping the underlying active ingredients, did a phase 2 and a phase 3 trial that were positive, presented it to the PMDA, which may be the only regulatory agency in the world that's more conservative than the FDA, and just got approval to treat children and adolescents in Japan and Taiwan with this game. So really exciting to see that. Thank you. Very exciting. I mean, from a business perspective, it's great to move around the world, but as a scientist, to like say what we thought was true is that there's nothing culturally specific about this. As a matter of fact, there's nothing specific about this at ADHD at all. We've shown benefits in numerous populations, from depression to autism, children, adults, MS, lupus, things that you don't even think of as cognitive conditions. It's basically agnostic, including healthy people, to the cause of what might be reducing your attention. So this led to my research lab to change into a research center called Neuroscape. We're just about a decade into our journey, and I'm going to quickly move through what we've been doing over the last decade. So this is what some of our labs look like. We have 5 labs. We have an extra one now, a VR lab, and we also have an MRI scanner. And what we've been doing is creating the next level of the closed loop experiences in all sorts of different ways. So I took out a bunch of this, but I just want to give you a high level of what we've been working on. We put a lot of attention into meditation and mindfulness practices because of the rich literature that they have benefits across multiple domains. So, and it also falls into the area of attention, which is our expertise. And so working with a friend of mine, Jack Kornfield, who's an absolute master in the field, we created this game called Metatrain. It integrates principles of breath-focused concentrative meditation with closed-loop design of feedback and reward. And I'm not going to really break this down now, but in 3 different randomized controlled trials, we showed that this improves attention outside of the meditation loop that you do in the game in children, adolescents with adverse life events, and seniors. And we recently found, and we're just going to publish now, that in seniors, we don't only improve attention, but improve stress responsivity and increase telomere length. 6 weeks of Metatrain. That's a cellular marker of aging. So like a really exciting degree of transfer. We now have another game, Engage, which is trying to access practice of breath-focused meditation with children. Very hard for kids, focused meditation, not breath focused, very hard for children to find their breath. This uses sound, eyes closed, finding insects, love this game. And then trying to move the focus beyond breath to words of loving kindness, another game that we did with Jack Kornfield, trying to improve empathy and compassion, not just attention and stress responsivity. We have a lot of work in virtual reality type of platforms, from motion capture. This is where I reduced it down. This was 4 slides, but Labyrinth is a wayfinding game showing improvements in long-term memory, high-fidelity long-term memory in older adults. Coherence is a rhythm game showing improvement in older adults and working memory in children in language acquisition. This is now being tested as a treatment for dyslexia in children. And Body Brain Trainer integrates physical and cognitive challenges simultaneously, showing improvement in both physical and attention outcomes in children and older adults that last a year. So just a quick overview of where we've been putting our time. Again, I am going to fly through this, but we've been doing a lot of work to see, can we boost these effects? So one focus is, how do we bring more than performance data into our closed loop, but physiological data? So these are 3 papers showing both neural data and heart rate data, when fed into the closed loop, help us reach better effects than we can with performance data alone. And then a slew of work showing that we could stimulate the brain non-invasively with direct current and now alternating current to accelerate the learning effects. I know that sounds like science fiction. We actually have a paper where we just repeated what we did in the last paper to convince ourselves that it was true. Now, what we're trying to do is show that this actually, we've largely been showing that it improves the gameplay, which is still remarkable. But now we want to show that it improves the transfer of benefits, makes them happen quicker, makes them last longer. We're doing some amazing studies in this space. When I say we, so Neuroscape is up to 40 people now, 9 faculty. We're a big group. We have an NIH-funded study of older adults with mild cognitive impairment who at home play Metatrain while we stimulate their brain at 4 hertz across their frontal lobes, based upon the results of our Nature paper showing that that was the marker that improved the most, to see if we can accelerate the learning curve on people that will likely or most likely go on and develop dementia. So that's just a little bit of an overview of where we're going. This is not closed loop yet, but that is the direction that we're heading. All right. It is a big, exciting landscape of technology out there. I do not have to waste any time explaining it to this audience. The commercialization of virtual reality, augmented reality, wearable physiological devices, motion capture. Most of this is positioned for communication and entertainment. There is tremendous potential for these tools to be delivered as like the next level of closed loop experience. So lots to look forward to there. And then there is the elephant in the room that you knew I'd get to sooner or later is AI. How does AI fit into all of this? All right. This is where I'm going to pause the bus for a second and talk about the reality that technology has fundamentally challenged our brains in a really, really impactful way, and a negative way. And in addition to the clear and present danger of misinformation, it's really challenged our distracted minds. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I wrote an entire book on this topic with this title, but 3 points I want to make here. Rapid reward cycles, accelerating all the time, create a complete intolerance to being bored that then burdens our sustained attention and our delayed gratification. There's just too much information that we are exposed to, and it's been associated with a whole list, especially in young people, of stress, anxiety, sleep, mood problems, sleep problems, the whole list. And then when we engage in multiple sources of information, what we call multitasking, there's incredibly strong links with safety, productivity problems, even interacting with other people in a deep way. So there is a problem here that it's worth acknowledging as you advance into these next levels of technology. And then there's this fascinating phenomena that people refer to as cognitive offloading. I still remember, for those my age, being a kid in the 70s and the controversy around calculators in the classroom. Does anyone remember this? That we'd lose all these abilities. And, this conversation, for one, I would say no human being should ever have to do long division, ever again. That seems like non-controversial to me, right? That's just done. But I understand the concern. I mean, we have an ubiquitous use of GPS, to-do lists, calendar reminders. I mean, I use them all too. I'm not preaching from some mountaintop, but there is a lot of concern, including what's known as the Google effect. If you don't know this, you could Google this or chat it. And it shows that there is data to suggest that memory abilities are impaired or challenged by using search engines. All right, so that all seems quaint next to this. So we teach AGI to think, reason, and code so you don't have to. I took this picture at SFO earlier this year as I was leaving the airport, and I was thinking, is that what we want? Do we not want to think anymore? And this really rattled me, right? The idea that we would offload thinking and reasoning, that this is a goal. Now, it's things like this that make me want to sit in front of trees for long periods of time, which I do. And think about, how did we end up here? How do we spend billions of dollars on building artificial intelligence when human intelligence is in complete shambles? Like, this feels misdirected to me. And how do we use technology to enhance us as humans as opposed to diminish us? And this is what I want to conclude with, my efforts since COVID started on how do we get there. So this is a nature study. We call it the nature journey. Spending time in real nature is super important to me. I'm about to jump into nature with my wife and my 2 little girls for 5 weeks. There's an incredibly rich literature on how nature is associated with improvements in stress and mood, well-being in general, restoration from cognitive reserve. There's even practices starting in Japan of forest bathing, which are now prescribed around the world. So there is a lot here that we already know. The study that we're doing, and this is what I took all of COVID to build, has 3 components. The first is a 60-minute powerful nature and music journey that we co-created with Louis Schwartzberg and East Forest, if you happen to know those brilliant people. And it is really moving. Someone told me today that they participated in one of our studies and was crying during some of these scenes. So it is moving. It is meant to be moving. While you're watching this, you're seated in our new multi-sensory immersion lab. So this is an experience that you see, hear, smell, and feel. And while that's happening, we are recording 150 plus sensor data from multimodal biosensing, recording from your brain, your facial expressions, your gut motility, your heart rate, your heart contractility, electrodermal activity, real-time blood pressure, on and on. If we could record it, we record it. Now, why are we doing this? Well, the first step is to understand how these baseline emotions then lead to higher level emotional responses, the baseline states, and how that is then translated into longer term effects on well-being. We actually do not understand this propagation very well. I feel with an experience as strong as this, with a multi-sensory environment, and with the type of recordings that we're looking at, coupled with machine learning, of course, we have a chance to do this. And then what is it about nature stimuli, as well as music, that facilitates this translation, for some people, to lead to these positive outcomes, both for their well-being and also for empathy for nature, which is another important part of this study for me. So let's wrap it up. Where do we go from here? Well, the next step, that's the first step, is to figure out how we can use multimodal biosensing to guide closed-loop, multisensory immersive environments, right? This is what I think of as sort of the pinnacle of the closed loop. Same slide I showed you before, but much more data flowing in, much more real environments coming out. The first step of doing this, and the first route that we're undertaking, is just to use machine learning to rapidly interpret this information and then use it to give simple prompts to large language models to generate stimuli. First pass. How do we start taking rich data in and start building environments? But the more elegant, more challenging solution that no one has accomplished yet is to create the true closed-loop AI. So what do we mean by this? So your multimodal, real-time, non-reduced data is directly prompting the generation of personalized multisensory environments. That is feeding back and changing the very source data, and around it flows. So imagine this is an adaptive dynamic dance between you and an AI that's challenging, stimulating, nurturing your brain, right, to help prevent that slippery slide into unhealthy mental states and serve as a new approach for addressing the cognition crisis. So that's the vision. This is what we have been working on to try to understand how do we get to this next step. So, in summary, I believe that the future of experiential medicine is multimodal biosensing, game design, art, music, story, sensory immersive environments woven together with AI-powered closed-loop experiences. That is the direction that I think we could go to make a big impact. I think that anything can do good, can do bad. So if you feel like that's scary, I think that is appropriate response, and therefore you have to build in all the responsible steps to make sure that this does good, right? Like fire cooks your dinner, it burns your house down. A molecule could be medicine or poison, depending on the dose. Nuclear reaction is energy or a bomb. Anything that can do good can also create a lot of destruction. So I think it's important to pause here and be careful. And to conclude, we're now looking at how experiential medicine can interact with molecular medicine. There's nothing inherently wrong with the concept of using a molecule to improve cognition. The thing that we were so misdirected about is to think that we can do it in isolation as a silo. How they could work together is really interesting. And where we're going with this, the first molecule we're looking at is something known as psychedelics. Does anyone want to participate in a study? We have one starting in the fall. You could sign up, of bringing all this together. So, in conclusion, I would say that we can do better, and we absolutely need to do better. An important step on that process is to learn how to enhance cognition. But I do believe strongly that our crisis of self, our crisis of environment, can only be remedied by deeply understanding and loving ourselves in connection with nature. Can technology help us with this? I hope so. Thank you.